Shalom, thanks for joining me. Numbers chapter 25. We heard the story of Bilam and Balak, and I gave you in the last video the sad fact of how Bilam managed to tell Balak how he could corrupt Israel. Chapter 25 is that story. It's that story. Chapter 25, remember I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Study Bible. And you can get this off the YouVersion or get your own physical copy of it. I love this translation. So here we are, chapter 25. This is a sad story. Israel stayed at Shittim, and there the people began whoring with the women of Moab. These women invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, where the people ate and bowed down to their gods. With Israel thus joined to Baal Peor, the anger of Adonai blazed up against Israel. This is how you corrupt the people of God. You get them to intermarry. You get them to be sexually immature, immodest. You get them to be sexually immoral. And you also then connect them to rites of pagan worship. And so pretty soon, the hearts of these young Israelis who were the children of those who died in the wilderness, these are the ones that are supposed to cross the Jordan River, which they do in Joshua chapter 1, and conquer the land. But here they are being weakened by sexual immorality and by not valuing devotion and commitment to Yahweh, the one true God. And so this is what Balaam taught Balak. This is how you weaken them. You may not be able to beat them, but you can weaken them. And here it is. Verse 4. Adonai said to Moshe, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them facing the sun before Adonai, so that the raging fury of Adonai will turn away from Israel. Moshe said to the judges of Israel, each of you is to put to death in his tribe who have joined themselves to Baal Peor. Does this bother you? Are you bothered that Yahweh would do something like this, would ask this? Well, again, remember, God is sovereign, and God has said over and over and over again, I am holy, therefore you be holy. And this is how serious God takes holiness. Yeah, think on that. So, hang them facing the sun. It's fascinating that they would be facing the sun, because one of the Baals, Baal is a generic name for these strong ones, gods in general, kind of like the Hebrew word El, which means strong one. Elohim is plural for strong ones. Well, Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal, is a generic word that the pagans use for their gods and goddesses. And one of their gods is the god of the sun. So I want you to hang them facing this false god that they have chosen to worship. Hang them facing that. By the way, that hanging, form of crucifixion, by the way. So crucifixion wasn't unique to Jesus. Crucifixion was a common form of capital punishment. So string them up on a tree facing the sun, because that's the false god they were worshiping. So then he says this, each one of you is to put to death those in his tribe who have joined themselves to Baal Peor. If you're going to be a leader, you're going to have to make some pretty hard decisions from time to time. And this is one of them. So just then, get this picture, just then, in the sight of Moshe and the whole community of Israel, as they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting, because the people are now realizing how horrible this is, how sad this is, what the high cost of this is. And they're starting to feel the weight and the burden of their sin. They're being convicted of their sin, and they're starting to weep. And right in the middle of all of this, watch what happens. As they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting, a man from Israel came by, bringing to his family a woman from Midian. This is one of these pagan women, bringing her to his family. When Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon, the Kohen, saw it, this is the priest, he got up from the middle of the crowd, took a spear in his hand, and pursued the man from Israel right into the inner part of the tent, where he thrust his spear through both of them, the man from Israel and the woman through her stomach. They were having sex, and he thrust that spear to the back of the man all the way through the stomach of the woman, pinned them to the ground, killed them. Yes, killed them. And then watch the end of that verse. Thus the plague among the people of Israel stopped. Nevertheless, 24,000 died in the plague. So this sexual immorality, the way God began to inflict judgment upon them, was to inflict the plague among the people. And it's a sizable amount of people. 24,000 died in the plague. But Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, who was the son of Aharon, the first high priest, the first Kohanim, the first Kohan, Pinchas takes a spear and he stands like Aharon did when he stood between the living and the dead, and stopped the plague by burning the incense. Now here is Pinchas, his grandson, stopping the plague and doing it in a very extreme way. Adonai said to Moshe, this is now verse 11, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon the Kohen, has deflected my anger from the people of Israel by being as zealous as I am, so that I didn't destroy them in my own zeal. Now, I got to pause a minute. Several times we've already read in the book of Numbers, God got so fed up with Israel, he said to Moshe, step aside. I'm just going to wipe them all out, and I'm going to start all over with you. And Moshe begged him, don't do that. Don't do that. So here is Adonai almost ready to wipe them out again. And this is the children. This is the new generation. That should be the generation of faith. But they were now the generation of immorality, sexual immorality. And so here's the sad thing. Here is Pinchas. I want you to know something. Even in the midst of a very corrupt and immoral culture, it is still very possible to be wholly devoted to God, like Pinchas. So here he is. Therefore, he says, this is verse 12. Therefore say, I'm giving him my covenant of shalom. I'm giving him my covenant of peace, making a covenant with him and his descendants after him, that the office of Cohen will be theirs forever. This is because he was zealous on behalf of his God and made atonement for the people of Israel. Pretty extreme, but it happened. Verse 14. The name of the man from Israel who was killed, put to death with the woman from Midian, was Zimri, the son of Salu, leader of one of the clans from the tribe of Shimon. The name of the woman from Midian who was killed was Cosbi, daughter of Zur, and he was head of the people in one of the clans of Midian. So this was important people. Adonai said to Moshe, treat the Midianim as enemies and attack them, because they are treating you as enemies by the trickery they used to deceive you in the Peor incident and in the affair of their sister Cosbi, the daughter of the leader from Midian, the woman who was killed on the day of the plague in the Peor incident. After the plague, Adonai said to Moshe, this gets into chapter 26, and they take a census. I'm going to pause there a minute and just say this. Midian is an ancient name for what is today Saudi Arabia. Midian was the far western side of what is today Saudi Arabia. And if you remember, this is where Moses went when he left Egypt, when he ran from Pharaoh. He spent 40 years in the desert in Midian, and he spent those years herding sheep, and this is where he saw the burning bush. And this is very likely where he brought all of Israel to the mountain that is there in actually western Saudi Arabia. That's actually a better candidate for Mount Sinai than the traditional Mount Sinai that's at the very bottom of the traditional Mount Sinai, or Sinai Desert, Sinai Peninsula. Something to think about. All right, I'm going to skim over a little bit of chapter 26 because it's just another census. You got to understand, starting in chapter 26, uh, they're now encamped on the plains of Moab, which is right next to the Jordan River. And across the Jordan River is Jericho and the promised land, the land of Israel. And so they had taken a census at the very beginning of Numbers, which is how the book of Numbers got its name, Numbers. And so here in chapter 26, they take another census because now they need to know, all right, how many people do we have in our army? And so that's chapter 26, and it's detailed. And then it gets down, by the way, you find in verse 51 that there's 601,730. And then starting in verse 52, he begins to explain how the land, once you cross over the Jordan, you begin conquering the land. You have to divide up this land according to your tribes. And each tribe gets a certain amount of land based on the size of that tribe. That's the end of chapter 26. Then in chapter 27, there's an interesting little story about the daughters of Zelophehad, one of the men, and he died. He didn't have sons. He only had daughters. And according then, only the sons could inherit the land. So the daughters came to Moses and said, hey, if we marry into other tribes, then our inheritance will be lost. Please allow us to marry and keep this land in our tribe. And Moses went before the Lord, and the Lord gave him the answer, and that gets him through verse 11. Chapter 27 is where that happens. But then watch this. This is the end of chapter 27, and I want you to stay with me on this, okay? This will take just a few more minutes. Don't run away. I know this video is a little longer than the others, but hang in there, okay? Adonai then says to Moshe, climb this mountain in the Abarim range, and look out at the land which I have given the people of Israel. After you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, just as Aharon, your brother, was gathered. In other words, this is a way of saying you're going to die up here on this mountain after you have seen the land, okay? Because in the Zin desert, when the community was disputing with me, you rebelled against my order to uphold my holiness by means of the water with them looking on. This was Merivat Kadesh spring in the Zin desert. If you remember that story, God instructed Moses, speak to the rock. And Moses was so angry when he brought himself before the people that he took his staff and he hit the rock twice. The water still came out of the rock. God honored that. But God called Moses and Aaron aside and said, okay, bud, I'm sorry. You disrespected me in front of all the people. So now neither you or Aaron will enter the promised land. And so here is God telling him, you're going to go up on this mountain. You're going to look out. You're going to see all this land. But you're not going to cross that land. Your brother's already died on a different mountain, Mount Hor, and now you're going to die here on Mount Pisgah. And Moses said to Adonai, let Adonai, God of the spirits of all human beings, appoint a man to be over the community, to go out and come in ahead of them, to lead them out and bring them in, so that Adonai's community will not be like sheep without a shepherd. Adonai said to Moshe, take Yehoshua, the son of Nun, a spiritual man, and lay your hand on him, and put him in front of Eleazar the Kohen and the whole community, and commission him in their sight. Delegate to him some of your authority, so that the entire community of Israel will obey him. He is to present himself to Eleazar the Kohen, who is to find out by means of the Urim what Adonai's will is for Yehoshua's decisions. Then at his word they will go out, and at his word they will come in, both he and all the people of Israel with him, the whole community. Moshe did as Adonai had ordered him. He took Yehoshua, put him before Eleazar the Kohen and the whole community, laid his hands on him, and commissioned him, as Adonai had said through Moshe. So here's Moses passing on his authority and his power of leadership to Yehoshua, or Joshua, the son of Nun. We like to call him the son of Nun because, we're a bunch of Southerners, But his Yehoshua, the son of Nun. That's how you pronounce it. And by the way, that makes mention of this word Urim, U-R-I-M. There were these two stones called the Urim and the Thummim. And somehow or another, they were decision-making stones that the high priest had. And so whenever he would inquire of God to say, do we do this, yes or no, he would do something with these two stones. No one knows. It's a total mystery, but it's more like casting lots and finding out yes or no, that kind of a thing. And by the way, that phrase, gathered to your people, where he said to Moses, you're going to die and you will be gathered to your people. The burial custom of Israel was when someone died, they wrapped you up in these linen wrappings and they placed you in a tomb, a cave actually, on a bench. And there they would come back 1 year later and they would recover your bones, because that's be all that was left. They would gather the bones together, put them in a bone box. The bone box was called an ossuary, and there are thousands of these ossuaries that archaeologists have found all over the place, and many of them had lots of bones in them. And so you would then gather these bones, put them in the ossuary. Then you would take the ossuary to a different part of the tomb, and you would store it with the other ossuaries of everybody else in the family or in the clan. So when it says you were gathered to your people, it means we gathered up your bones, put them in an ossuary, and we put your ossuary with everybody else's ossuary. You were gathered to your people 1 year later. So whenever you read in the Old Testament where it says he died and he was gathered to his people, that's an entire year that goes by in just a handful of words. So here is the prediction for the death of Moses, and I'm going to stop there. Sun is going down now, so I'm done for the night. I'll record some more. How about that? Thanks for joining me.